Ultimately, your users just want to get their work done. In a perfect world, you wouldn't want to limit a user's ability to access their software, but at the same time, you want to be fairly compensated for that use. End users generally don't want to exceed their license rights, especially now with tighter internal compliance rules in place, but they often don't know what those rights are, making it impossible to stay compliant. Of course, you can decide how strictly to enforce your licenses by the way that your software behaves when licenses are not available. But what strategy should you adopt to strike the right balance between your needs and those of your customers? No single licensing implementation works across all product categories, but a license manager is the best tool to provide the flexibility to cover the full spectrum of license enforcement models, from the very strict to the self-compliant. So after you've decided how lenient or strict your licensing policy is going to be, you have to decide what to license. Most often, applications are licensed as a whole, using a single license, but in some cases you may want to license additional features for which some customers will pay extra. Licensing should be carefully aligned with how you plan to price and sell your product. Determining the right licensing model requires an understanding of how your customers will use your products. If it is dedicated to a specialized niche purpose, you can use a named user or node-locked license. On the other hand, if the product is meant to be to use floating or concurrent licenses. So what's a user? Properly defining what a license use is will ensure that your software is used precisely as intended. For instance, should a user on a workstation consume only one license regardless of the number of copies he uses concurrently? Also, should a floating license that is used for only a short duration be allowed to return to the license pool immediately, or should that license impose a hold time to encourage the sale of more licenses? Details like this need to be worked out so that you can avoid any confusion with your customers about the scope of your licenses. You have to also ask yourself the question, should your licenses expire? Obviously, if you settle on a subscription-based pricing model, you'll want your licenses to reflect the paid license period. But even if you sell perpetual licenses, you may want to limit the duration of the license so that licenses require periodic refreshment in the field and to allow you to make changes to your product's licensing model. Finally, should licenses match a specific product version? Most vendors prefer allowing older versions of software to consume newer licenses, but not the reverse. Some vendors specify license version numbers as release dates in order to manage support contract periods.